New Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid is back for Game Week 10. Yes guys, we've got some crucial transfer tips and injury updates in this video today, so I'm very excited to get started with another Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid video. Before we get started, if you haven't checked out the latest Stick to FPL episode, then what are you waiting for? A lot of people are saying that this is our best episode to date, a Halloween special where we bought each other costumes to wear. If you're concerned and worried about why we are wearing these things you are seeing on screen, well, you'll have to watch the episode to find out. But we also talk about a lot of great FPL information, such as Haaland, and whether you should keep him or sell him, as well as restructuring your team, and some very good transfer tips in there as well. So go check it out, subscribe, the link is in the top of the description. You can watch it on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, and I'm sure you guys are going to love it. Don't miss out. So as always, the Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid video is divided into two sections. The first section, we're going to be talking about the players that you already have and whether you should be keeping them or you should be selling them. After that section is complete, we're going to find out some replacements, which players you should be buying and which players you should actually be avoiding. The higher the player is on the list, the higher they priority are to either keep or buy, and the lower they are, the higher priority they are to sell / avoid. Let's get going. Starting off with some forwards, we've got to look at the best players to keep in this category, and certainly there are a few players that I would be looking to keep for Game Week 10. Raul Jimenez and Vardy would be two of them because of their great fixtures in this game week. Brentford are one of the weakest defenses in the league, so that home fixture for an in-form Raul Jimenez is just brilliant, and as you're soon going to see, Jimenez has some of the best attacking data of any player. If you've been watching Fulham recently, you'll be able to see what form he is in, the amount of shots he's taken from dangerous areas, the fact that he's also creating for his teammates, which a lot of the other forwards aren't really creating very much. So Jimenez is kind of topping that kind of list. And since he's been in this main starting Fulham team, he is the third best for XG, only after Haaland and Jackson, which is absolutely insane. The fixtures over the next four are brilliant, so Raul Jimenez would be definitely a player I would be looking to keep. Jamie Vardy, I think, is also worth keeping for one more game week against Ipswich. He's been in some okay form recently as well, picking up a little bit from earlier on in the season. And as we know, Ipswich are one of the worst defenses in the Premier League, and particularly the forwards do seem to benefit from this fixture a lot. So Jamie Vardy, I expect him to come in and score more goals. Really unlucky not to get a penalty last game week as well. So I think he's going to add more goals to his tally. His XG numbers are picking up nicely. And Nicholas Jackson, even though the next two fixtures aren't amazing, I actually quite like Jackson for the medium to long term. So if you already have him, I would actually be looking to keep him. Again, his attacking data is really nice here. 3.43 XG. That's the second best after Haaland in this period of the last 6 game weeks, and 4 goals scored is very nice indeed as well. Speaking of Haaland, I think if you have him in your team, I don't think he's an automatic keep anymore. Now that Southampton game is out the way, the fixtures do look a little bit worse for Manchester City, and it might be worth selling him if you have some other ideas. But he remains in the monitor category because I don't think he is a must sell at all. He is an optional sell only if you're maybe using multiple transfers to redistribute the funds in your team. There's not much use in selling Haaland unless you are going to sell him, downgrade him, and upgrade another position in your team. If you don't have multiple free transfers, it's probably just worth keeping Haaland for this week and maybe making a double transfer in next game week. One player who I wouldn't mind replacing Haaland with financially would be a player like Salah, but we're going to come on to him very soon. Delap, I would look to monitor. He has got a great fixture at home against Leicester. However, what should be said that he was rotated last game. Now, apparently Delap was dropped in the game week 9 for tactical reasons, but he did come off the bench and score a goal. So I wonder if he will get his place back in the team straight away. But he is someone to monitor, and certainly after game week 10, he would be a player I would be looking to sell. Similar situation to Vardy. Monitor Solanke. I think he is worth having a go for the next 2 game weeks. Aston Villa have been conceding goals this season, and then Ipswich at home after that. Even though Solanke's data over the last few game weeks has been down quite a lot and he's not looked super impressive, I do think he may be worth keeping for the Ipswich Town at home fixture. And then after that, he would probably be a definite sell. So for now, he's a monitor, an optional sell if there is another forward you would really like to get in your team, but I don't think he is a must sell quite yet. And Welbeck is the last player to monitor. I think even though his fixtures over the next 2-3 game weeks are really bad, Liverpool and Man City in the next 2, for example, because Welbeck is in such good form, it might just be worth keeping him anyway, but he is very close to being a sell because of those really bad fixtures and all of the great forward options that we do have available for us at the moment. And as for the sells, this one will probably be a little bit controversial, but I put Ollie Watkins in this category, and the main reason for that is because there are just options just as good as Watkins for far cheaper at the moment. 9.1 million is an insane amount to spend on a striker who has pretty bad fixtures actually over the next 4 game weeks. Watkins faces Spurs, Liverpool and Chelsea all away from home in the next 4, and looking at the data here, yes, he has scored 5 goals, but he's done that through an XG of 2.83. Now, Watkins is not a career overperformer, so we don't expect him necessarily to continue to perform at this rate, and he should drop down to about, the same amount of XG as he's generating, which in theory should be less in the upcoming fixtures. I see a lot of these cheaper forwards in the 5.5 to 6.5 category scoring just as well, if not more than Watkins, for significantly less money. So therefore, Watkins for me is a sell. I know that's going to be controversial, but I can just see the other cheap forwards scoring just as much, if not more, than Watkins. And therefore, what is the point in spending all of this money on the second most expensive forward in the game? You're not going to captain him. I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. Havertz's data is also down over the last couple of game weeks. I think he is struggling a little bit recently, and his position is a little bit more tentative than it was before. Before, he was just a standout striker. Now his position is a little bit more fluid, and we've got some difficult fixtures in the next 3 for Arsenal as well, so not super convinced he can score at the same amount as some of the cheaper guys here as well. And Calvert-Lewin, this is a really difficult one, but I think if I was a Calvert-Lewin owner, I would be very tempted to sell. Yes, we do have Southampton as this next fixture, but I don't think we've got a guarantee that Calvert-Lewin will even start because Beto came off the bench and scored. And also, yes, his numbers are decent, the fixtures are decent, but we know by now, we've got enough years worth of data to tell us that Calvert-Lewin is not a top finisher, and he is always going to track underneath his numbers. So he can have insane numbers. He is never going to match those numbers in terms of his actual output. That is what matters the most in FPL. So we do have to take data with context for some of these players, and Calvert-Lewin is definitely an example of one of those players. The other thing is, you are definitely going to remove Calvert-Lewin at some point in the near future. So why not do it? Just do it now. Take away the risk, take away the headache, and go for another player who can score just as well, and make that move now rather than do it later. You're going to do it later anyway. So should be done. I think Calvert-Lewin for me is a sell. I would love to hear if you guys agree with me on the Watkins and Calvert-Lewin in particular. Do you think these players are sells, or would you be tempted to keep them? Depends if you have other issues in your team, I suppose. So let's go through some of the other positions. So in midfield, Salah would be an instant keep for me. There would be no way I would be selling Salah this game week. In fact, he's even a captain option against Brighton. So I know a lot of people are potentially looking at Saka and Palmer moves from Salah. I just don't think I would be going there. Don't think we need to say too much on this one. Salah is just a straight up keep, as is Saka. Any moves involving switching Sons and Sakas and players like that, not really sure I would do that, to be honest. I mean, we could potentially look at selling a player like Son, but maybe, but I don't even know if I would do that. I think I would put Son also in the keep category. So all of those expensive guys, whoever you have, I would just keep them in your team for the midfield positions anyway. Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, all of them are decent options right now. Don't think any of them are really worth switching at this point. And Semenyo is probably going to be a controversial keep in here as well. At 5.6 million, I do still think he is one of the best value picks in the game at the moment. He's had some really tough fixtures recently, and he's got one more tough fixture against Man City. But after that, Bournemouth fixtures do really look brilliant. And I do believe Semenyo is a fantastic football player who always looks really good, particularly in the games against the weaker opposition. So if you can bench Semenyo for one game week against City in game week 10, even if you have to play him, I wouldn't hate that because Man City are prone to conceding goals. But in general, I would definitely be trying to keep Semenyo because actually he's a player that I'd be looking to bring in from Game Week 11. And if you already have him, then I would keep him. That's just my personal opinion on him. As we know, he is a shots machine, takes a load of shots, but there is another player in the monitor category who is taking even more shots over the past 6 game weeks. And that is Brennan Johnson, who is going to go in the monitor category for us today. I don't think he's worth selling. I think he is fine to keep for the next 2 game weeks. Unlike a player like Solanke, Johnson is actually putting up decent data still. He continues to put up that decent data. So therefore, I think he should be fine for the next 2 game weeks where we've got some good fixtures. Game week 12 onwards, we'd possibly be looking to move Johnson on, but fine for now. Rodgers, another player to monitor. Not a huge fan of these fixtures, to be perfectly honest. I mean, where do we go here? There's a lot of games here that you might be tempted to actually bench Rodgers, so I can understand why people would be tempted to move him on. I don't think he is a definite sell or anything like that, but certainly he is one to monitor. I'm not super keen on this pick at the moment, but he's okay. If he's on your bench, then, he's serving his purpose quite well in that respect. McNeil is here as well, one to monitor until we know his injury status. Is currently carrying a knock, but he's got good, particularly creative data here. It's not too bad. He's not got world-beating data, and if you compare his numbers to someone like Semenyo, yes, there's been a big points discrepancy between McNeil and Semenyo, but actually, I think the data is kind of similar between the 2 players, and considering Semenyo's got the better fixtures after this game week and McNeil has the potential injury, I'll just be aware of that one. Monitor for now, but could be a keep if he is fit. Luis Diaz, final player to monitor. A little bit of rotation risk here. We have seen him benched in recent game weeks, but an injury to Diogo Jota and to Chiesa has improved Diaz's minutes potential, and the next few fixtures are pretty good for him still. One to monitor. Madueke is a sell. You guys will know I've never been super keen on this pick. The data is not really there for a 6.5 million midfielder. Yes, if he was 5.5, we'd be looking at this data and saying, yeah, this is fine, this is okay. But for 6.5, I want a little bit more from a player, something like what Johnson is producing, perhaps. Gordon, also a sell. His data is pretty bad outside of the 2 penalties he's taken recently. In fact, the last FPL return that Gordon got outside of that penalty that he scored, the one he scored a couple of weeks ago, was all the way back in game week 2. So he is really not performing for a 7 million plus player. And Diogo Jota, we recently got the news that he is going to be out until at least the November international break. So he's going to be out for quite a few game weeks here. Just get rid of him, just sell him. We know about Diogo Jota. He does sometimes pick up those injuries, and at those moments, it is time to sell him. For defenders, I like Trent Alexander-Arnold. I know a lot of people don't like him as a pick. I personally do. I really like his attacking data, and considering that clean sheets are difficult to predict, having a player from a Liverpool team that actually is keeping clean sheets, generally speaking, in this season. I know Liverpool have just had 2 tough fixtures, but the next 3 are good. I think clean sheets are going to be back on the cards, and I like Trent's attacking data. No defender is beating Trent for attacking data right now, so I still think he is worth his money at 7 million. Not a player that I would want to sell personally. If you are looking to free up budget, I would rather kind of sell players like Haaland and I guess Watkins to free up budget rather than a defender like Trent, because I think the big thing about defenders is there's not really too many good defenders out there, whereas in the forward position, yes, you might like Haaland, you might like Watkins, but actually there's loads of great replacements for them. Really, in defence, there's not really too many players I love the look of right now. We will go through some players I do love. Saliba, also would look to keep him now that he is back and available following suspension. I think Arsenal are capable of keeping clean sheets in the more difficult games, and we are going to touch on Gabriel very soon as well. And Van der Ven at 4.7 million, I'd be willing to keep him as well. Spurs' defensive data is not too bad. He's nice and cheap. You'll get the very occasional attacking return. He's a fine pick indeed. The more expensive Spurs defenders, I would maybe drop down a category below. Pedro Porro in particular is a player who, you know, his attacking data drops every game week. He is occupying a slightly different role. He is not really taking set pieces anymore. So therefore, we've got Villa and Man City in the next 3. You're probably going to be thinking about moving away from Spurs players in general anyway. And if you can free up some budget by moving Pedro Porro on, I would consider doing it. He's not a must sell because of that Ipswich at home fixture in Game Week 11, but he is a player we're monitoring right now. Dalot, another player to monitor. Tough fixture against Chelsea, but good fixtures after that. And with Manchester United bringing in a new manager, Amorim, Portuguese manager, I wonder if a love affair with Dalot may come forth. Obviously, Dalot missed a big chance at the weekend, but if he's getting those kind of chances, that is going to be half the battle for him. And Gabriel is one to monitor. Initially, I did put him down as a sell, but we have got the news today that Gabriel's injury might not be so bad, according to Mikel Arteta. And that's the big thing. Do we trust Arteta? Because Arteta is saying that Gabriel's injury actually is not too bad, not too much to worry about here. Can you maybe afford to bench Gabriel for one game week if he is unavailable, or more likely start Gabriel and have some bench cover for game week 10 just in case he doesn't play? But apparently there's no real ligament damage, so that is positive news for Gabriel, assuming we believe Arteta. I'm going to leave that in your hands though, and that is why he is a monitor. If he's available for game week 10, he's a definite keep. If he's unavailable, then he's probably a sell, depending on how long he's going to be out for. The simple fact is, we have no way of verifying that with a deceitful manager such as Mikel Arteta. Which brings us to the sells. Konsa is going to be a sell for me. Difficult fixtures coming up. Very little attacking threat. I know he has scored a goal this season, but that is extremely rare. Konsa is kind of a 1 goal contribution per season kind of player. So I don't expect too many more throughout the season. Fixtures are really tough from a defensive point of view when you look at Spurs away, Liverpool away, and Chelsea away. So I would very much consider moving Konsa on. Not a player I'd like to play in these upcoming games. Mazraoui with the potential injury here as well, and a difficult game against Chelsea, as well as Luke Shaw potentially coming back soon. Think it might spell trouble for Mazraoui, and therefore he is also going to be a sell. And Lewis Dunk, we've got the news over the last couple of days that he is also going to be out for around a month or more. So, unfortunately, he is going to have to be a sell as well. Before we go on to part 2 of the video, if you haven't liked already, please do. It massively helps out the channel. Just one click to like, it really helps out. And do subscribe with notifications on if you haven't done already and you love FPL content. Let's get on with those buys. On to some buys and some avoids. In the forward category, Raul Jimenez would be my #1 pick for a buy this week if you're looking for a new forward. Yes, guys, we spoke about this earlier, but the data is just so good. And when we compare him to Wood, who is kind of second on this list, you can see that Raul Jimenez is, yes, he is kind of maybe scoring slightly less than Wood. It's not very much in it, but the data is there to back it up, which isn't really the case with Wood. The data isn't there as much. 2.26 XG over 6 game weeks is okay, but it's really not anything insane. And I think Jimenez is slightly better in that regard. So I expect Raul Jimenez over the next 4 game weeks, 3 game weeks, 3 game weeks in particular, to outscore Wood. Last game week, I did have Wood slightly higher because of the immediate fixture. But from this point, I think Raul Jimenez now has the better fixtures moving forward. So it is always going to be tight between these two. For this game week, I'd rather go for Raul Jimenez. Of course, last game week we did say Wood, and that's going to change each game week depending on who has the immediate better fixture, because it is really tight between these kind of players. Cunha is going to come in 3rd place here. I don't like his fixtures as much as Raul Jimenez or Wood, so I would prefer the 2 top guys. However, Crystal Palace at home is a reasonably good fixture indeed. One thing I'm not keen about Cunha is that his data is not amazing. He doesn't really get big chances. Maybe that's because he plays in a slightly deeper position. He's not a true number 9 like some of the other players on this list today, and therefore, yes, he is very involved, yes, he can be more creative, and he will still score goals, don't get me wrong, but is this the perfect time for Cunha, or is maybe game week 11 a slightly better time to get him, particularly if you're looking to bring in multiple of these attackers in? But all 3, very, very good buys. Love them all. Now, Wissa is going to be in the monitor section, so he is just below the top 3, and that is mainly because of the next fixture. Fulham away is no easy fixture. Let's get this right. Wissa, brilliant player, very, very good data, particularly with the limited minutes he's played over the last 6 game weeks, and plays for a great attacking team in Brentford. but is it the perfect jumping on time for a player like Wissa? I'm not sure. Given the choice between Rao, Wood, Cunha and Wissa would come in fourth for me, and therefore he is in the monitor category. Strand Larsen, another player to monitor. Love this price, love him as a differential, and actually his goal scoring data is slightly better than Cunha's, although it should be said that the top three here, Raul Jimenez, Wood and Cunha, are penalty takers. Wissa, Strand Larsen, yes, they're a little bit cheaper, but they are non-penalty takers, which I think does make a difference. Jackson is a player to monitor. You could consider buying him, but I don't think it's the right moment. If you have him already, of course, we mentioned he is a keep, but if you're looking to buy Jackson, I would probably wait until game week 12. And as for Vardy, yes, I like this immediate fixture, but I think Vardy is probably going to be a sell in game week 11, and I don't really think he's worth it as a 1 week punt. Similar situation with Delap. The next fixture is good, but after that, it does get a little bit rougher. And of course, we do have that tiny bit of rotation risk with Delap as well, so I would be looking to avoid him in game week 10. Haaland, for the first time this season, I am going to say, if you don't already have Haaland in your team, remember guys, this is not the keep sell category, this is the buy avoid category. I would not buy Haaland. That's not to say I would sell him. Please do not get it twisted. But if you don't have Haaland already, I think you're good. I think you're Gucci. I think you're fine to continue without him for a little while longer, particularly as there are so many great cheap forward options right now. And finally, Welbeck is going to be in the avoid section just whilst we get these difficult fixtures out of the way. And maybe we can start talking about him again as a real consideration to buy after this little difficult run over the next two. Midfielders to buy. How about Mbeumo? No surprise to see him here. He is, of course, an absolutely fabulous option at the moment. And even though Fulham away is a tricky fixture, the form of Mbeumo has just been so good. You really can't make any more excuses to not have him in your team. It's just a case of the form is so good. You can't go without him anymore. I don't really know what else to say. If Mbeumo has not convinced you that it is time to buy him yet, then I don't know what will convince you. He's been top of the buy category in these buy, sell, keep, avoid videos for weeks, and he will stay there until the fixtures get a little bit worse. And even then, he might still be a buy. Salah would be the one premium player that I would be most keen on buying this week, just because I think he is a captain option in both game week 10 and game week 12. Possibly game week 11 as well, to be fair, as we have Arsenal and Chelsea playing each other in game week 11. So yeah, Salah, I would be pretty keen to have him in my FPL team right now. Definitely a possible buy if you can make it work. And Saka is another player I would look to buy here as well, potentially, if you can't quite afford a Salah. A good thing about players like Saka is that he will perform, he will score, even in the more difficult games. He just has that about him a little bit. And in the monitor section, Palmer drops just below the other two, just because in the next 2 game weeks, I think both Salah and Saka outscore a Palmer in the next 2. After that, I think Palmer will then go ahead of the other guys there. So for the next 2, Palmer just dropping down a little bit, but after that, we're going to be talking about Palmer as one of the priority must-buys in the game of FPL. Smith Rowe, one to monitor. I don't know if I'd be desperate to pick him up right now, but the fixtures look pretty decent. Brentford at home, love this fixture. We've got that Wolves at home fixture in 12 as well, which I like quite a lot. He looked better in game week 9, but maybe a little bit disappointed in the few game weeks before that. Of course, if you have Smith Rowe, he is a player to keep. He is a player to play in your team. But if you don't have him yet, you don't have to buy him this week. He is an option for sure. He is in the monitor category. Buonanotte, another optional player here. Ipswich is a decent fixture. If you are looking for a cheap benchable player, a cheap player that you can rotate in just for certain game weeks, then I think he works pretty well for that. McNeil and monitor whilst we await his injury status. And then for avoids, Luis Diaz, just that rotation risk and the fact that I think we're probably looking elsewhere for midfielders at the moment. I'm going to put Luis Diaz in the avoid category. Yeah, maybe controversial. Bowen, not a player I would like to bring in either. Nottingham Forest away is a tough fixture. They are one of the tougher defences in the Premier League. And Bowen, yes, he scored the penalty last game week, but he's not ordinarily going to be on penalties. It's only because players like Paqueta was off the pitch that Bowen took the penalty. So for 7.4 million, difficult fixture in game week 10. The data is okay, but not quite enough for me to justify spending the money on a player like Bowen. I'll be waiting for some slightly better fixtures from game week 14 and 15 onwards before we have a look at Bowen. And Rodgers, yeah, if you don't have Rodgers yet, I would feel no reason to buy him. None at all. Yeah, if you have Rodgers, fine, bench him, play him certain game weeks if you want to, but he's yeah, not a player I would look to buy this game week, certainly not with these fixtures. And defenders, well, there's two players who seem to be in the buy section every week at the moment, and they are Aït-Nouri and Gvardiol. These are the two main defensive buys. After that, it gets a lot trickier. The great thing about Aït-Nouri and Gvardiol is that, well, they have attacking potential and they've shown that they can score goals and create as well for their teammates, which is really useful when clean sheets are difficult to come by indeed. I think with Aït-Nouri, the fixtures look good, so we could start to see some clean sheets for Wolves and for Man City. They are capable of clean sheets in any given fixture. It's difficult to predict when Man City will keep clean sheets, but it's always a possibility no matter what the fixture run is, which is why Lewis is in here as well. Nice, cheap, kind of version of a Man City defender here, and he looks to be playing most games, so no rotation risk as of yet. Maybe that happens in the future for both him and Gvardiol. And I think that's why Aït-Nouri is slightly above these guys, is because at a certain point, Gvardiol and Lewis will start to get rotated a little bit more, and Aït-Nouri doesn't really run that risk. One risk you do have with Aït-Nouri is that he is currently on 4 yellow cards, and when he gets his 5th yellow card, assuming he gets it within the next couple of months, he will be suspended for 1 game. So be aware of that one. If you are buying Aït-Nouri, I would hope that if you buy Aït-Nouri, you have at least 1 defender on your bench that can maybe cover if Aït-Nouri were to get suspended. For our monitors, I've got Aina in here as well as a potential player you could go for, I suppose. Yeah, it's difficult. It really is difficult trying to pick out defenders outside of, well, Aït-Nouri and Gvardiol, basically. The one other player I would maybe throw in, as well as the guys on screen so far, is maybe a Mykolenko. Nice, cheap 4.3 million Everton defender with pretty good fixtures, and we could see Branthwaite really improve the Everton defence if you're looking for a cheap guy there. But we've got Aina here in this particular list, and we've got the Liverpool guys here as well. You could buy them, you could avoid them, kind of up to you. The fixtures are, they're mixed. I don't think Brighton is a great fixture. I don't think Aston Villa is a great fixture. We have got Southampton in there, but do you trust Liverpool's defence? They've been great so far. A little bit of attacking threat for Trent. That's why I do prefer him to Konate and Van Dijk, because I think he offers a little bit more in terms of that data. You can see that on screen, guys, that Trent's attacking data is significantly better than his defensive teammates here. So that's why I do prefer Trent, but these other guys are okay as well. And avoid Young. Yeah, Ashley Young is going to go in the avoid category because Mykolenko is 4.3 million. And yes, Young has got 3 assists, but from 0.79 XA. And Everton are not a team known for their finishing ability. So I think this is a bit of a blip, I suppose. What's a positive blip called? I don't know. What's the opposite of a blip? But it's looking like this is unsustainable. I use that word a lot, but I don't think it's sustainable for Young, and therefore I would save a little bit of money and go for the 4.3 million Mykolenko instead. Digne, with these fixtures, I wouldn't be touching Aston Villa defenders, certainly not buying them, and that's why Digne is going to go right here. And Keane, yes, one of the most transferred in defenders in FPL for this game week. I think he's second to like Aït-Nouri at this moment, which is crazy. Maybe second to Gvardiol as well. It's insane, but I think a lot of people don't realise that Keane is going to be replaced in the Everton starting lineup with Branthwaite, and I think game week 10 is the moment that happens. And once Keane is benched, you've got a 4.2 million defender who is not really offering you anything when there are other 4 million defenders that can offer you at least guaranteed minutes. Keane is not going to be that guy. If it doesn't happen this week, it will happen in game week 11. do not like Keane at all as a pick, and I would be looking to strongly avoid him. And finally, goalkeepers. Let's do this one quickly because I don't really like goalkeeper transfers. Raya and Sanchez are very much keeps. Areola and Alisson, I would look to sell them because Areola has lost his place and Alisson is injured. That's the only reason really to sell a goalkeeper, so they are going in the sell category. In terms of goalkeepers to buy, Sells and Raya would be my two favourite goalkeepers to pick up right now. If you're on a wild card, I would probably go for one of these two goalkeepers for my wild card goalkeeper and avoid Kelleher because I think Alisson is going to be back within the next few weeks, maybe a month. So Kelleher, if you buy him now, you are guaranteed to spend another transfer to remove him. So he will be a goalkeeper transfer that actually costs you 2 transfers. And given the fixtures, there's not any amazing runs of fixtures here. I don't think it's worth it. And Edison, yeah, not very good value for money in terms of goalkeepers, so he is also an avoid there. But guys, that is all our buys, sell, keeps, and avoids for today. Let me know what you think of them. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my selections. Very, very keen to get your opinions. And if there's any players we didn't mention today, let me know in the comment section, and I will categorize them. Are they a buy, a sell, a keep, or an avoid? I'll let you guys know what my opinion is as well. That sounds good to me. But do drop a like on the video. It is massively appreciated. Do subscribe if you haven't done already. And check out the Stick to FPL podcast next using the link in the description. I think you're really going to love this episode. But I will see you tomorrow for another video. And I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.